Hey guys, I thought I'd do a quick video on looking at some basic statistics for quantitative data analysis. Right here I basically have data from 11 hives measured over an 8 and a bit day period. These hives are at different locations in a truck, and this is like the truck itself. That's a trailer over there, it's a side view. That's the sensor locations because we're just looking at the trailer today, so just the trailer data. Now you see here that I've got, these are the 11 hives and their data. I've got some location data, which I've basically codified to make it nice and easy. Down here I've got activity. Basically the hives started off in Queensland. This is when they're travelling, that's when they arrived. That's where they were, that's when they got unloaded, and then they stayed there. This doesn't have to be hives, it could be absolutely anything. The main point is I'm going to show you how to look through a large amount of data in a grid like this and start to pick out patterns. So, the first thing we can do, which will let you visually see it, and this is really useful for designers, is if you select your entire data set like this, so that's all the hives, not the days, because that's a different measurement. These are in degrees Celsius, and we can go up here and we can go to conditional formatting. Now the conditional formatting table will automatically format data based on a method you select. So for example, I can put little bars in there like this. It's kind of useful, but it doesn't show us quite what we want. However, as this is temperature, we can then colour things using these scales, and you'll see here that if I pick the green and red scale, here the hot colours up at 35 degrees turn green, whereas the cold go red. Let's make it more sensible so that the red's actually hot and green's cool. Then we can start to see a few patterns appearing in the data, and we haven't actually clicked on anything yet, we're just mousing over and we can see patterns coming out in the data. Now I'm going to pick the red and blue scale for hot and cold. I'm just going to click on that. Now instantly, looking over here, I can see there's a streak here of red. There's a streak up here of red. Now that tells me the data's got similar, so something's happened. I can look over and go, well, I know that's my arrival point for the hives, so that means something interesting is going on. Same happens with the unloading point. And we can also see, looking down, that some of the hives are a little bit hotter than others at certain points. There are certain days where we have heat streaks happening. Now, while this is great, we can't just say this looks a little bit redder than this bit. That's not really academic speak. So what we can do is start running some very basic statistics. First thing I'd like to do is take an average. Now the formula for doing an average is you hit equals and then you type in average in capitals, open some brackets, and then you just drag the range right across like this. And now we have the average temperature for all the hives. Now let's also get, say, the minimum temperature out of the whole group. So the minimum will find the lowest value out of all 11 hives, which looks to be number 11 here. So all we do for that is go equals min, open brackets, once again select the data range and close. Cool, and then we've got the value that we can see. This may sound like a long way of doing it, but it's a lot easier than ploughing through your data looking manually. Same, we'll go up find the maximum. The reason we're looking for these is that minimums and maximums sometimes show interesting points in patterns. The next one we can do is look at the range. Now the range is basically how far is it between the minimum and the maximum. So the easiest way to do this is just go equals, and then we select the maximum column and we subtract the minimum column. And now we have a range of 9.3 degrees. Okay. Now let's fill this down. First thing I want to do though, this has got too many decimal points on it. So I'll come up here, use these buttons around here, and I can basically bump it back. And let's just say, let's take 2 decimal places. Now, if I select all these, what you'll see is I don't have to go, I can go Control C, copy, and then paste it. It's a bit slow, but if I want to do lots of columns, you'll see down at the bottom here, let's move those. Down at the bottom here is this little square. If I grab that with that plus and drag him down to the bottom of our data set, this now auto-fills my values. And that's pretty cool. So now we have average, minimum, maximum, and the range of our data for each of these columns, for each of these kind of quarter day increments that I've done here. Now I can apply conditional formatting to these as well. I don't want to apply it at the same time as these over here, because this is comparing apples with apples, and this here will be comparing the average to the average, and then the minimum to the maximum, and so forth. So, if I select each column, just go to conditional formatting again, and I can see very quickly where the interesting data starts to pop out at me. Oops. Now, what I might want to do with the minimum maximum is conditional format those two together rather than individually, because I expect the minimums to be mostly blues and the maximums to be mostly red. But here, I now have a comparison of which maximums are higher than others, and we can see where there's overlap between different groups. Like, for example, the minimum here, being a darker blue than everything else in this column, shows me that one of the hives has a serious issue, which is this one over here. Okay, so that's quite interesting. We'll do a conditional format on this column as well. That will show me that up here, this is the largest range. Where's the smallest? Let's have a look. That maybe down here. So I can link that to different sets of data. The interesting thing there is you can see that on arrival and on the unloading of the beehives, we're actually getting a much smaller range than anywhere else. Once they've arrived at their location, you've got a fairly small range there. I mean, that's a 7, 8, 5, 6 degree range here. So we can see that the range actually drops depending what's happening to the beehives if they're being moved. And looking up there, we can also see that this data here shows us that something's happened here. So in my activity, I can say, well, what happened there? And I can go back and look at my observations. Now, there's a column here that I've left for standard deviation. I will cover standard deviation off in the next video because there's a little bit to talk about as to why standard deviation works. But what I've tried to cover here is some basic ideas and techniques to immediately look at interesting data in your quantitative data sets.